and welcome to this ETNOW special. I have a very big guest with me. It is the president of Industry Chamber FICCI, who is also the top boss of HUL. Sanjiv Mehta joining us right here on ETNOW. Mr. Mehta, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for giving time to ETNOW. So let's get straight down to it. We don't have a lot of time. In the run-up to Union Budget on 1st of February, expectations are certainly running high of how the Central Exchequer is going to give yet another booster shot to growth when inflation is looking like it's going to be a serious problem. Let's begin by having our conversation first with the rural economy, something that you recently flagged off for degrowth that is being seen as you experience as the HUL top boss. What can the budget do for the rural economy?
Thank you, Nayantara, and my greetings to all your viewers. And, if we step back for a moment before we get into rural, I think we must say that there have been many good things which have happened in the last 1 year. But if there are two areas which, if I need to pick up, are a bit of area of concern. One, of course, is what you call as the private final consumption expenditure, which if you look at from a lens of components of GDP, it constitutes, it's the largest component, constituting about 55-56% of the GDP. This is still about 2-3% lower than its pre-COVID level, of 2019-20. And the second one, which is linked to this, is the private capital investment, which has remained subdued. And it is very clear that private capital investment picks up when there is demand, when there is high consumption, and the capacity utilization goes up. Now, when we look at from a lens of rural, rural had been, there was a stress in rural consumption toward the end of 19, but during the last 2 years, 20 and 21, it was pretty robust till about a quarter or two. And in no small measure, it was, and we believe it was absolutely the right thing to be done, the government interventions, where they ensured that no one went hungry, free food grains, where there was a direct transfer of money. And even the agri sector remained reasonably resilient. And if we look at it now this year, it will be about nearly 7-8% higher than the pre-COVID levels. And the government intervention from an MSP, etc., also, all this played part. But now we are looking at that over a high base, FMCG many times is a barometer, a lead indicator, and we are seeing stress coming in. And this stress is also exacerbated because of inflation. And this is not a homegrown inflation. This is inflation which is across the world. And inflation results in prices going up. And where in rural India, where 60% of our country people live, and a large part of the people would be having meager incomes, it means a significant stress on the wallet. So very clearly, I think if you were to look at the budget, you have to look at it from three dimensions. One is to continue the recovery. Second is you need to provide relief to the stressed. And the third is you have to continue on the journey of reforms. So when it comes to relief to the stressed, I think rural is one area where I believe the government should focus on, and they should extend all the welfare schemes that ran for the last couple of years, extended, maybe in some cases even increase the outlay of MNREGA. That will result in more money coming into the hands of rural consumers. And while they, navigate the commodity price increase, and hopefully it would help us pick up the demand and consumption.
That's right. At a time when we started to see some very real profit pools, capex cycle making a turnaround, and how by India Inc. as well, this is against that backdrop where the finance minister has to, like I said, give another booster shot. A lot is being said, for example, about higher infrastructure spending, more on social schemes for rural as well. But Mr. Mehta, by all indications, it's seeming as if this government will be able to do better than the fiscal deficit target it had set out for this financial year. That is going to announce a number that is going to be better than the targeted 6.8% fiscal deficit of GDP. We've got a hint of that also from the principal economic advisor while tabling the economic survey and in the press conference talking about not having met the full fiscal deficit. This is a government, therefore, can spend more, but is choosing not to spend more for whatever reason. What would industry's message be?
We are very clear. Balancing the fiscal deficit, Nayantara, could be done in many ways. Yeah, you could have a good increase in your income, like taxation have been very buoyant, increasing by about 30% compared to the figure similar period in 2019-20. You could also control your deficit by reducing your expense. I think this is not the moment where we should reduce the expense, especially the expenditure which results in a multiplier effect. And we believe as an industry body that the fiscal deficit, which was budgeted at 6.8%, it may come down, but it should not. In the new budget, we should be looking at a serious reduction in the deficit. There would be time to do that, consolidate the deficit. But at this stage, the economy, the recovery of the economy is underway. It has not yet fully recovered. And before the demand and the private capex kicks in, I think the government expenditure will necessarily have to play a catalytic role. And we believe that the government should not shy away from spending.
So you want the government to spend more while not completely loosening the purse strings, being rational when it does do so. So can I then ask you, Sanjiv Mehta, we've discussed rural, for example. How should the government be doing this while also tackling inflation? What are your top 2 or 3 ideas?
Thank you for that question. Budget is never of either or. It is always an and. The government has to first look at how can they augment resources. And one of the best ways would be to accelerate the disinvestment, privatization. Yeah, I'm so happy that Air India has happened, and hopefully that would pave the way for many more to come. And unless it's a very strategic interest, the business of the government should not be business. And it is not just, if you look at Air India, it is not just about the consideration that they will get from sale of Air India, but very importantly, the hole in the budget, which comes from bleeding losses, will stop. So first is augment the resources. Second is, we have now started to see the benefit of GST. GST, it took time before it got stable, but now we have started to see. And one of the reasons why we believe the taxation has gone up, the tax collection, is because of the formalization of the economy, and also the government has been able to plug the holes. So one has to look at it from a lens of first, how do you augment resources? Yeah, augment resources, but without in any way is kind of tinkering with the tax rates or not having a stable policy. That is extremely sacrosanct to build the confidence of the business. Then when it comes to consumption, when it comes to expenditure, of course, we have to look at the relief of the stressed. And we talked about rural, but we also have a lot of people in urban India who have gone through severe stress. And many of them are linked to industries which have taken a massive toll during the pandemic. Yeah, the restaurants, the tourism industry, the hotel industry, many people are jobless. So can a welfare scheme like a MNREGA be instituted for the urban poor? That's so important. The second would be what is the role the government would be playing in generating demand? At the end of the day, the virtuous spiral or the virtuous cycle kickstarts with demand. Demand leads to higher capacity utilization, more private capital investment, more jobs being created, more money in the hands of people, and that's how the cycle starts. So they will have to look at it. One is, providing relief to the poor will, when it comes to essential propel demand, but they could also be looking at, is there ways and means to providing some relief to the middle class people? Is there a headroom to reduce the tax rates for the middle class? That would put more money in the hands of middle class so that they can go about spending the money. So this is one very important area. And once the demand starts, like I said, the virtuous spiral starts. And last but not the least, budget is also an occasion where the journey with the government is embarked upon, which is the reforms, ease of doing business, lowering the cost of business, fundamentally looking at it, how as a nation we become more competitive, and competitive from various dimensions, from cost, from service, from quality, from R&D and innovations. And this is where the government's policy will be very clear at what are the steps the government is taking. So it is always going to be looked at from a perspective of and. Recovery of the economy, relief to the stress, and reforms.
Got it. Oh, absolutely. And, thank you so much for simplifying it like that. Now, the big event that's also going to take place after the union budget is going to become 9th of February, and when the RBI Monetary Policy meeting will be convening and announcing its outcome. We all know what's happening in the United States, how liquidity might become tighter, central banks around the world looking at tightening monetary policy. Back home in India, as you're saying, we're still recovering. What would the big message be on that front?
Nayantara, I think we should give the credit to our RBI governor, who has very deftly handled the monetary policy in the last couple of years. During the pandemic period, he's ensured that the economy is not starved of liquidity. Second is significant steps have been taken to strengthen the banking sector. Not very long back, we used to talk about the dual balance sheet problem. The banks had a balance sheet where they couldn't lend, and the corporate sector had balance sheet where they couldn't borrow. Now, thankfully, that word is no longer being used. The good profitability of the corporate sector and the deleveraging has helped their balance sheet. And of course, the infusion of capital in the banking sector has strengthened the banking sector significantly. But going forward, Mr. Das will have to play a very critical role, which is a fine balancing act between ensuring that there is no runaway inflation, while at the same time ensuring that the growth is not stifled and the economy is having enough liquidity. It's not going to be easy, right? Because in many ways, as a central bank in the country, we will also have to be cognizant of what the Fed is going to do and what are the other central banks going to do, because it would result in flight of capital if we do not take corrective action. But I think we should be pleased that our central bank is in the hands of a very competent governor. And I'm sure he will be able to steer the economy in the right direction, the monetary policy in the right direction.
Yes, let's see what really does happen. We've seen the US Fed, of course, indicating they will do whatever it takes to rein in inflation. The markets are now saying just 4 rate hikes. But back home, we talked about this right at the top of the interview, but I'd like to discuss it more now with you, which is inflation. While the union budget may not always be the way for inflation management, it is certainly an opportunity. What can the finance minister do for this, as inflation is rearing its ugly head?
First, I think we must understand that this is not a homegrown inflation. Yeah, this is inflation which has come in from outside India, whether you look at palm oil prices, yeah, where most of the palm is grown in the Southeast Asian nations, or you look at the crude oil and the derivatives, or in many ways the cost of logistics, which has significantly gone up, which is because of supply side constraints across the world. Yeah, the cost of container, the cost of shipping, etc., all that has galloped. So one, we must understand that it's a global phenomena, but you're absolutely right, Mantara. We have to find ways and means of ensuring that the impact on the people is minimal, because we have a large section of the population which has meager income, and inflation has a huge impact on them. So there are various ways you could be doing it. One is to help people cope with the inflation. You could be ensuring that we put more money in the hands of more people. That's one way. Accepting that some inflation, you won't be able to remove it. It's bound to be there. The second is whatever steps you could take to reduce inflation. For instance, taxes and duties, because a lot of these products are imported, be it fuel oil, be it palm oil. How do you reduce it so that the end impact on the industry is minimal, and the industry then does not take the kind of price increase which they would have normally taken if the duties had not been rationalized? We must also understand that because of inflation and the prices going up, this also has a positive effect if the rates of duties are not changed on the tax collections of the government. So part of that could be used for bringing down the duties so that the cascading effect of inflation is minimized. The other is, which is not really part of the budget, but it is really part of the GST Council, that could they be looking at certain products, especially products which are consumed by the masses and maybe low price point packs, where the GST for a limited period could be reduced. That again will have a direct impact on the masses, their consumption, and it will provide a lot of relief to them.
Okay, let's see if we do find some of that and certainly some duty reversal which could be taking place. We're also talking at a time when we're not completely out of the woods when it comes to global supply disruptions. Can Budget 2022 be an opportunity to address that as well?
Oh, absolutely. I believe that the inflation this time is not demand-led. In some cases, it is because capital investments have not happened, say, in the petroleum sector. And that is the reason why is the output is not keeping pace. There will always be some element of geopolitics involved when it comes to oil supplies and the impact of geopolitical uncertainty on the prices. There is also, I believe, a lot to do with supply chain constraints. And we had seen it in India. If you go back to 2020, when the first wave happened, and that was also the season for plucking tea leaves, and the cost of tea went through the roof in India. It was not demand-led. It was because there was a constraint. If the third wave or the current variant is the beginning of an end, then we should certainly be seeing supply-led constraints easing. And in the second half of the calendar year, the inflation start to tapering in many products.
You started this interview, Mr. Mehta, by saying what is really needed is stability. Everybody's saying let's not rock the boat, right? But it's also been a year where a lot has been said about the wealthy getting wealthier and the poor getting poorer. Are you expecting any increase in taxes at all?
Yeah, there is a bit of this paradox. Yeah, we can't get away from that. The stock market has boomed, but there are a lot of people, there is very clearly a stress on the labor sector. And there is paradox. Life is about paradoxes. And My gut feel would be, and I would certainly echo the views of the business as well, that we should not tinker with the tax rates. Yeah, we need policy stability. And, at the end of the day, the private sector has to play a bigger role in creating jobs, in capital investments, and fueling the economy. Now, if the profits have been higher or the stock markets have boomed, we also have to look at it from a lens that this will facilitate, in many ways, foreign capital coming in. Just look at the startup boom. Yeah, it has happened because of valuation, and people see that India is a great place to invest. So I would say that while going ahead, there may be moderation of prices going up, but I would pitch for stability of policy and tax rates, because that is so important to garner confidence of investors and business investors, not just Indian investors, but also foreign investors.
Yes, startups in the private unlisted space has clearly been one of the most exuberant spots of this economy. Let's see if Budget 2022 further unleashes the animal spirits. Sanjiv Mehta, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Likewise, Nayantara. Thank you and take care.